Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1979 thriller titled The China Syndrome. Now, The China Syndrome runs for 2 hours and 2 minutes long. It is directed by James Brooks. It is produced by Michael Douglas. The script was written by Mike Gray, T.S. Cook, and James Bridges. The cinematography was done by James Crabb, and the editing was done by Dave Rollins. And the stars of the movie are Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, Michael Douglas, Scott Brady, Wilford Brimley, James Hampton, Peter Donat, Richard Hurd, Daniel Valdez, Stan Borman, and James Karen. Now, it was a strange coincidence that when the China Syndrome was released, a real chemical industrial disaster occurred when the 3 Mile Island incident, located in the Dauphin County in Pennsylvania, happened just 12 days after the film was released. Of course, by this whole accident, the ticket sales really started to flourish because people were just intrigued, and maybe people were just somewhat misconstrued to believe that that this movie was based off of the 3 Mile Island incident. Of course, it really isn't. It's actually a work of fiction. But it did cause a lot of fear. It caused a lot of paranoia, which to no one to blame. But it also brought skyrocketed in sales tickets and at the box office, and it also garnered a few Academy Award nominations as well, including Best Actor and Actress performances for both Jane Fonda and Jack Lemmon, as well as two other Academy Award nominations, which I don't quite remember. But, let me tell you something. It had a real emotional impact, to say the least. The ticket sales truly skyrocketed at the box office, but the industrial community gave this film a bit of backlash for misconstruing the movie to the real events that happened, which resulted in pulling the film out of several theater outlets. Many viewers, though, thought this was, maybe just another James Bridges character study films of ordinary civilians going about their day to day duties, crossing a path between going about with their jobs and the questionable situations regarding the ethics that come with their occupations. Yes, it has that. But in hindsight, there's a little more to it than what I had just aforementioned. A film like this one would be hard to craft in today's market of filming, not just about the nuclear power plant situation, but about journalism taken from a feminist's perspective. The film's main language does not does actually yes, it does consist of overpowering technological jargon that might be easy for a person to understand if they have a degree in engineering. But if you're just an average schmo journalist like me, well, I would have to go into some deep research to decipher what these guys are saying because it's just so overpowering. But, it just makes everything all the more believable. Yeah, that's true. But not everybody in the audience has a degree in quantum engineering or quantum physics and whatnot. So to get a better understanding of what these highly trained people are saying and what they're doing in these chemical plants, we need more further extrapolation to simplify things, not to necessarily dumb down the audience, but to get a much more better understanding. That's all. It doesn't have to be simplified to the sense that you want to treat its audience like we're all a bunch of fucking morons. No, we want to get a better, clear picture of what they're saying. I don't see why that should be so hard. It doesn't have to insult the audience, but just a little more convenience to the audience out there that's just watching just to get a feeling of the thrills that happen throughout this movie. It is truly incoherent if you don't have this engineering degree. We get an in depth look at the power station along with its fuel pellets and dampening rods. The nuclear station emphasizes mostly on high tech applications like SCRAM, auxiliary feed valves, and the titular China syndrome, which truly is a thing of great concern, but not the radioactive annihilation the movie makes it out to be. And so, in spite of all the paranoia and the frightful concerns, Bridges had succeeded in adding little subtleties that make this film all the more satisfying and irresistible to watch. The sound effects are clearly at the top of the line when delivering a story. Sometimes it's not just dialogue that tells the story, it's just the whole idea of sound effects. And just, anything that could touch your emotions tells the whole story in its completeness. When the first alarm sounds off, this is the perfect call to implement panic towards the characters and the viewers, and it's really quite chilling. Then you have Supervisor Jack Goodell, played by Jack Lemmon, telling everyone to shut that alarm off, but is aware from the start that something is just not right. Then we come to a bit of silence, which is subtle but yet very disturbing, sort of like we get a blood curdling sound likely to make you go deaf, and then it just stops and is replaced by the building's rumblings and the workers muttering words that lack in anything but comforting. If you think for a moment that this movie has any kind of feel good moments to it, think again, because there just isn't. Some people might say this movie is anti-nuclear power plant, but I think that analogy can also be deeply misconstrued. I don't think it's saying that all nuclear power plants are bad and that they should all get shut down. No, without their energy, what would I be doing right now? Need I say more? But I digress. I think what they're trying to say is that no matter what workplace we enter, whenever there's a emergency situation, we should all take precautions of what to do. And I think the whole gist of a nuclear power station is being just used as a guideline or a decoy to sort of get the message across. I mean, in case an emergency happens, and I guess in the situation of the 3 Mile Island, we sort of feared this kind of situation. And I mean, I'm sure the employees who worked there had that feeling of stress and paranoia, because it takes a lot of skill and a lot of experience to work in these kind of establishments, And if it's put in the hands of someone who's inexperienced or the hands of the wrong people, then all hell will break loose. So that's why it takes training. That's why it takes experience, and not just some kid who just recently got graduated from college. No, if he or she does not have the proper or essential training to run a power plant, then they should seek either further training or go seek employment someplace else. We don't want a disaster to happen, and if it's put in the hands of the wrong people, then they're all fucked. No question about it. The scenes Bridges feels more at ease is when he turns his attention to the broadcast studios, mainly because Mr. Bridges himself started his career in broadcast journalism, where we see the eventual boost in the career towards ambitious reporter by the name of Kimberly Wells, played by Jane Fonda. Fonda is just truly outstanding in her Oscar nominated performance as a reporter trying to cover more serious news coverage like this one, but is sadly held back due to the narcissism in the newsroom and is only looked upon as eye candy and covering what is sort of almost like nonsensical fluff. She is there covering news of a whale celebrating a birthday party, but yet she wants to dig her nails deeper into much more serious, heavy handed situations like what she just saw at the Ventana power plant, where it was almost this close to a nuclear catastrophe, and she wants to get in on this heavy handed story that could really bring their station to the top, but also with the fear of retribution. They are either not taking this story seriously enough or maybe too serious for the fear that they could get into serious trouble with outlets if word comes around that this story may not be as serious as it sounds, or they want to hide themselves to save for Ventana to actually save their reputation, because Ventana, of course, all the PR guys and all the other hacks or the upper echelons will say, "Oh, it was just an emergency situation. It was nothing that serious." But of course, she's not naive. Neither is her cameraman, Richard Adams, played by Michael Douglas, who also produced this movie. They're not wrong in saying that, something is not right and that they were just lucky that they scraped through the first alarm system, because if another alarm system is to happen, that could be a recipe for utter disaster. And she, of course, knows that the Ventana power plant is in question if that environment is safe or not. Now, Jack Goodell wants to think that Ventana is a safe working environment, but even now that he had seen firsthand what the situation has happened, he is also now trying to put this in question. Of course, he doesn't want to think negatively about Ventana because, hey, this is his livelihood. This is what he has worked hard for many years. I mean, so be it. But for the safety of his other workers and himself, he does not. He also has his doubts that this is a safe working environment. And of course, the upper echelons want him to sort of keep shut about the working environment that they're that they're trying to keep top secret. But of course, if word comes around Goodell is the most likely person to blurt out that Ventana is not a working place. So, of course, there's like hired hitmen following him around, trying to stop him from opening up to the press. But of course, that's where the other sign of paranoia and fear come in. Sometimes I like to sometimes think this movie is not just a thriller, but I think this could be almost like a monster movie. Now, monsters don't necessarily have to be big, hairy, hideous, evil creatures. No, monsters could just be made up from the fear inside of us. Working environments like Ventana is the monster. The whole sounds of the alarm systems or the technological malfunctions put in the hands of the wrong people, and then a catastrophe should occur. There's your monster. There's your fear. Monsters are not just in the physical sense, but they could also be through the head and through the heart. And I think this is also what this movie is trying to come across. But it's also told and executed in a very real fashion. The characters seem to be very real and very fleshed out. And they all seem to be very, very convincing in their respective roles. And I got to give hats off to the performers, especially Jane Fonda. Jack Lemmon, too, a man who seems to have built his reputation playing mostly comedies, is also very effective in a role where he's actually playing a much more serious character, and he knows that whatever situation that's happening, he knows that it's that he knows that it's a dangerous environment that he's in, and that his entire life is in danger. And even though he may not speak very much in this role, his emotions actually speak volumes. And that is actually very, very effective in his delivery. Sometimes it's just your emotions could tell 1,000 words in less than a minute. And that's what he does, and he does it very, very effectively. So while this whole thing is happening, Bridges grills incompetent TV producers through their half baked news segments and their chronic sexist ways, while this heavy hitting industrial catastrophe falling into becoming more dignified. Bridges makes his film come to life by adding more inventive ways to keep the chill factor alive in his movie without spoon feeding his audience, without downsizing their intelligence. Even though, you can't give the full details because, hey, it's a movie, it's not a documentary. But at least, we get the gist, we get the feel, we get the environment, and we get the emotions. And it plays off very, very effectively. When the courier gets killed in a fatal car crash scene, this is truly a nod to the infamous Karen Silkwood story. She was once a power plant employee who was trying to reveal secrets that, the environment that she is working in is not safe. So, in order to hush her up, there was this some conspiracy that is led to believe that she committed suicide, even though the real story was is that there is some suspicions that the Silkwood family believes that her death was not through suicide, but through actual fear. The exciting scene where Goodell outsmarts his mysterious killers Is the kind of thing Bridges wants as we watch a jittery person on his way to work, while at the same time shows his incredible exhibition of demolition driving. This was probably, in my opinion, maybe one of the most exciting scenes in the movie. I mean, if you're not really into too much talky stuff, there is an exciting chase scene involving Goodell and these two in a mysterious car following him around as he tries to make, certain U-turns and certain different patterns or different methods. And it seems like even though he's not safe at home, he decides to go into the next place where he's safe, that's security enhanced. That's his work. And of course, we could forget that scene where an almost power plant nuclear catastrophe was happening, and in order for him to get his message across, he ends up, he's really overwhelmed in fear, and then he pulls out a gun and he starts, evacuating all the employees from the office to, either do something about it or evacuate from the entire premises, while the co-workers, the ones who are doing the heavy duty salt mine stuff, to get up off their asses and get their shit together. And then of course, while this is happening, some guy tries to break into the front office where Goodell locked himself in. They shoot, they kill him, and then during the final footage of this whole catastrophe, some stupid PR joker or some other coworker, I don't remember, he eventually says that Goodell, I mean, they try to cover up Goodell's actual fears by saying that he was drunk and that he was paranoid and that he had issues. And then his longtime co-worker and probably the more experienced co-worker of Goodell's named Spindler, played by Wilford Brimley, he ends up trying to correct them by saying that Spindler was not drunk and that he wasn't insane and that he was the sanest person and that he wasn't really a scared, fearful paranoia. He was actually a brave hero who tried to warn us about the dangers of Vitana, and that he actually deserves more credit than he was been getting. And it just ended on a real happy note. Well, not exactly 100% of a happy ending, but at least he got some reassurance from his coworkers after his death. So, sometimes it often wonders if it's just the building itself that is of fear or just the code of ethics from the Vitana workplace and to the newsroom where Kimberly works. We sometimes often put these employees' work ethics in question as well. The climax of the China syndrome is handled for better or worse, is reasserted to archaic values. For example, the main one is for the broadcast worker's job to gather as much news coverage as efficient and informative as possible. However, Goodell can't give that much because, he's only a plant supervisor, and Wells is just way too inexperienced to be caught up in the middle of this ruckus. Many thrillers before and after the film, just a second, I'll take my notes, shows how complicated it is more important to gather information to the general public than hostages, weaponry stuff, or relics. Sometimes gathering news and digging for dirt is much more complex, but it does also have its rewards. I once had this quote that I made up or maybe it was taken from some book or some famous philosopher. But I've even said it too many times. The the bigger the hole, the deeper the treasure. And then we get the same routine where the brave but foolish reporter Kimberly, she maintains her composure and to confidently claim that she knows exactly what she's talking about. At first impression, we don't get very much to see except steel and glass, with the exception of browsing over the Los Angeles Interstate Highway. But then Bridges adds the intensity of blinking lights, situation boards, and some public relations joker informing the plant technicians that there's a snag in the system that needs urgent attention, and we get blurry footage of monstrous steel masses on the brink of collapsing. And to top it all off, the stoic robotic sounds of the teleprinter printing out in step by step procedures of a potentially catastrophic disaster. Let's face it here, this movie has everything to offer: fear, paranoia, hostility, code of ethics. This is truly an ultimate thriller, a really, really treasured movie that I recommend you all to see if you've never got a chance to see it. And if you did, please tell me what you thought of this movie. If I was to give a scale out of 10, I would definitely give The China Syndrome an 8.5. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember, be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Red Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.